This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and fashion. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, we're in Copenhagen for 3 days of design. We cross the city to visit its showrooms, galleries and exhibitions where a host of leading designers and brands are presenting their latest and greatest wares. We'll hear from the likes of Bruun, Bill Amberg and Paula Day. All that and more coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's show. And as I said at the top, we're coming to you from 3 days of design in Copenhagen, where the Monocle team has been out in force. I'm joined by Monocle's associate editor, Grace Charlton, and Monocle's Copenhagen-based contributor, Gabriella Delasanti, a regular on this radio show, a regular on the pages of the magazine. Gab, tell me, what's it like to have me and Grace in your hometown? I'm assuming outstanding.
Yeah, of course it's great. And I have to say, you're not the only ones coming from abroad to Copenhagen these days. I've been around 3 days of design from the beginning of the week, and there is more and more internationals coming here every year. You hear every language spoken on the streets of Copenhagen, even more than usual. I mean, Copenhagen, for its size, it's a pretty international city. But I have to say, 3 days this year is like, there's so many people coming from everywhere, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the event has grown as it's almost become an essential stop on any design itinerary, any design calendar. I mean, Grace, I want to throw to you now. We're here, it's 3 days. What this event is in the title. It's 3 days of design. So we're recording on the Thursday. The event is going to be wrapped up by the time this show airs. So I guess I want to put it to you. For our listeners across the globe, why should they care about what has happened in Copenhagen yesterday, today, and tomorrow?
I mean, it should be like 7 days of design. 3 days is too short. I wonder if they'll rebrand next year because they've got over 250 exhibitors or something like that. But why it matters, I mean, because Copenhagen is a huge home for design. They've got a very no-nonsense approach to it as well. They just care about functionality. And I think it might even be better than Salone del Mobile. Sorry to my Italian friends.
I mean, that's a huge call. Gab, the differences between Salone and 3 days of design, why do you think it's grown in popularity? Is there any sort of secret sauce here?
I think, design is very much in Denmark's fabric. I think that's what's so nice about it here is that it's very democratic and you can really feel in the texture of the city. I was in Milan a couple of weeks ago, at Salone and I think here it's just a little more accessible. You walk around the city, you see, smaller galleries, designers, even the bigger brands showcasing. And, it's just so much more accessible in so many ways. And I think that's what design should be. And I really think Copenhagen is leading the way when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, we're very lucky at Monocle to kind of tour the globe and go to all these different fairs. But the comparison I always use is being here is a little bit like, I guess, shopping along a high street versus or a neighbourhood group of shops rather, versus shopping at a mall. You're outside, you kind of get to experience the city in amongst looking at the products and looking at the wares. And I think it's a reminder that the objects you're looking at don't exist in isolation. They're part of our homes, they're part of our city. So I think that's perhaps the experience that appeals to people. I mean, Grace, you've spoken to a host of designers over the past few days. You've done a lot of reporting. You've gone and seen a lot of showcases. Are there any? And again, this is not just about 3 days, it's about so much more. Are there any sort of big lessons or trends or themes that you've observed since you've been here?
I don't know if this is me romanticizing Copenhagen and the Danes, but everyone is just so happy for each other. They're really happy to support one another and compliment instead of compete. That's been really refreshing to see. And yeah, I think the only thing, I'm going to partially retract my statement about Salone. The only thing that's been really annoying is that everyone talks about how last year it was 28 degrees and sunny, but I've been caught in maybe 3 rain showers today.
Yeah, there's been a real weather shift. So I'm not sure if that's a broader takeaway. That's just sort of some sort of criticism of it is on your mind. Maybe this shifts to August, but June does feel like a really nice time to be in Copenhagen. I mean, there's, it's filled at the moment with designers and creatives. But what I really liked what you said there is it's about, I guess, there's a real moment of coming together and everyone seems genuinely happy for each other. We were past the studio of Cecily Mance, who we spoke to for Monocle magazine in future. Keep keep an eye out for that one. But we were chatting to her, and it was really about these amazing collaborations. We had a similar thing at a dinner with Frummer and Faye Too Good last night, and that was all about, you know, this amazing British designer and this really, really brilliant Danish brand coming together and working on something together. Almost feels like for fun, like it is just about the pure pleasure of creating things. And there's almost this sense of a rising tide lifts all boats, which is the segue I want to move to now. So I guess for our listeners, we're in a place, you might hear some footsteps above us. We're in a bedroom basement is the way to put it. We're in the HQ of Reframed, an amazing Danish brand started by Kasper Simonsen, who joins us now to maybe first paint the picture. Where are we? Why are we underground? What else is taking place in this building that we're in?
We are currently in the Østerbro area of Copenhagen, which is a little bit outside the city center. And we are in our basement in our office, which used to be a workshop. And now it's been emptied out completely to be converted into two sort of individual bedrooms where we're showing our beds, but in a real life setting in a way. And we share this studio normally with a lot of different people. We normally call it Refugio, where we share with a bunch of creatives and designers from all over the world. And we do that because it's insanely giftful and incredible to be able to work with people across different industries and so on and benefit from each other.
That feels like, as we said, sort of a big part of what's taking place this week. There is almost this coming together, and sure, there's obviously going to be competition between brands here, but there's also an incredible amount of collaboration. I mean, how has being in this space sort of served you and served the work that you're doing at Reframe by being surrounded by other emerging designers and emerging brands?
In so many ways. We collaborate as much as we can. We use the same photographers and graphic designers and so on to try and benefit and help each other. To become better versions, or even to just integrate better into the city of Copenhagen, because a lot of people after Brexit as well has moved to Copenhagen, and they come here knowing a few, but they don't really have a root or have, you know, the community in the beginning. So this studio is a great platform for that. So that's definitely one thing. And today we share the studio with Objective Studies, which is a great digital platform that's launched this week, where you're championing designs from individual designers without sort of going outside of the brands. And they've put together a really beautiful exhibition upstairs, which is why we've been degraded to the bedroom. It hurts a bit, but I think it works.
Hey, the acoustics in here are sensational. That's why we have opted for it, other than the floorboards above us. I mean, Grace and Gabba sitting on a bed. There's this amazing new headboard, which looks like it's upholstered in some sort of beautiful quadrat or sacco fabric. Tell us a little bit about that. I do know that's a new release.
Yes, breaking news for us, really. We've been around for 2.5 years. We've only done the bed frame. We've sort of wanted to perfect that before we were ready to move on. So we went from a bed frame system to now also doing, you know, other things for the bedroom. We were kind of wondering where to start, and a headboard seemed like a great way to do it. But we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to launch products that serve a purpose, that solves problems. And, you know, some products are really difficult to sort of solve. But with the headboard, we felt like we were onto something. So we've created this beautiful extruded aluminium profile similar to the bed frame. It's unique in a different way. Where you can attach the head. There's a headboard panel that's sort of attached to the front of it. However, the profile sort of expands beyond the headboard itself to allow for all these other multiple use cases to happen sort of on the side of the headboard panel. We're working with an incredible lighting company in Spain to develop bedside table lights, and we got a lot of briefs out in the world already to try and develop all kinds of other products that's going to work with this headboard. That could be charging systems, it could be small trays or shelves and so on. For those specific things like your jewelry when you go to bed, or like your iPhone, you don't want it close to you, but you kind of don't want it too far away either. It could be all those types of things.
So there's some sort of, I guess there's lots of flexibility built into this. I mean, we're going to bring this first, I guess, chapter of the show to a close, and I want you to give me two things. One, why should people pick up or purchase a reframed bed? And two, why should people visit 3 Days of Design and Refugio next year?
Oh, okay, good question. So with the bed frame, this bed frame solves problems, like I said before. It's flat pack, it's easy to ship, it's beautiful to look at, it's just disassemblable and assemblable very easily. So if you are a young person that I did back in London when this idea came up, I had lived in 4 different places in 3 years. Like, you need furniture you can bring with you. Beds are awfully big and impossible to move. This is a great product for that. And then there's all kinds of other reasons, but that will make too long of a show.
I think that's a strong selling point.
Thank you.
Kasper Simonsen of Reframed, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back after this. So welcome back to Monocle on Design. Gab, I'm going to throw straight to you. We talked about it at the top, and the fact that this event has grown and it's really become a key spot, I guess, on the design calendar. You spoke to Bill Amberg, who's a London-based designer. We're going to hear that interview in a moment, but tell us a little bit about, I guess, what you have learned that maybe wasn't in the interview. There's some reflections you've had post that chat.
You know, we were saying earlier about how 3 Days of Design is becoming more and more international every year. And I think this really exemplifies what that means, because Bill has been working with leather, he told me, for the past 4 decades. And it's the first time he exhibits at 3 Days of Design. And he was a part of this exhibition called Transcendence, which is outside in this neighborhood called Ripsaløen, which is this big warehouse district in East Copenhagen. He just realized that this is where things are happening. And among the big design weeks all around the world, he's like, Copenhagen is now on the map. And so we had a really interesting conversation about that, and it was really insightful.
Amazing. Well, let's hear that conversation, which you've packaged up for us very nicely right now.
I'm currently in the district of Ripsaløen, east of central Copenhagen. It's a former industrial complex with big, spacious warehouses. Over the past couple of years, the place has been bursting with creativity. I'm here to meet British designer Bill Amberg, who has joined a group of other designers from around the world in an exhibition called Transcendence, which invites viewers to dig deeper into the use of different materials and their applications. Bill has spent the better part of the past 4 decades focusing on leather, and he's here exhibiting for the first time at 3 Days of Design, presenting some of his latest works. So I caught up with Bill to talk about what he's showcasing and why joining the fair for designers like him matters.
This is our first time at 3 Days of Design, Copenhagen. It's exciting to be here. We've brought with us a collection of furniture, some a year old and some new out of the box. It's a collection of furniture using leather from the rewilding estate in England called Knepp, where we've taken the hides of their longhorn cattle from the land. We've tanned them in a very unusual tannage in the UK. It's a pit tanning, vegetable tan. It makes a very densely fibred, hard material that's traditionally used for shoe soles. But with that, we've designed some furniture which is self-supporting, so it's a kind of structured leatherwork. And it's opened up a whole bunch of ideas around what's possible with leather and how you can rethink leather as a material for furniture.
I then asked Bill how, as a British designer, he sees the growing role of Copenhagen in the design industry. Whether it's a place that can go beyond producing local talent, as it has done over the past many decades, and become a crucial place for designers from all around the world to discuss and share ideas.
I think it's an interesting question that of Copenhagen and Nordic design in general. I would say I have kind of 3 answers to that. Firstly, it's where I come from to a degree. My mother was half Finnish and she worked for Alvo Aalto. My father was half Danish and he ran an escalator and elevator business in the UK. And I grew up around Scandinavian aesthetic. So it's where I come from in terms of the foundations and the roots of my philosophy around design. And that's always kind of been a major influence in my thinking. So this is a interesting way home, if you like. Perhaps that's stretching it a bit, but you kind of get my idea. I think that Copenhagen is holding, over the last kind of, I would say, 5-6 years, there's Stockholm, there's Cologne, there's been bouncing around Central Europe a little bit about where it would land. And I think that for whatever reason, 3 Days of Design is the one that's where it's landed. Again, I think that's probably down to the curation, and I think that's really important, that somebody is actually monitoring what's good out there, and that's important because it does It makes it a lot easier professionally to visit. Like I said about the difference between professionalism and entertainment, that's an important criteria for me. And I'm interested to see the rise of Scandinavian design overall. A lot of really interesting young designers are coming from here. There's a lot of activity around what's going on in Scandinavia. Just recently, this year, I was in Norway, and we work internationally, so it's part of my role is to look and see what I think is interesting and what's going on, where I think things are happening, and it's definitely happening here. So this is a good place to be, I think.
We ended our chat with Bill's participation at Transcendence and how he presents and showcases his work with leather, a material that, as he describes it to me, has gotten a bad press as of late.
Transcendence was interesting because it's about materials. Recently, in the last 5-6 years, leather as a material has been given a bit of a bad press, and for me this is an opportunity to go somewhere where we can talk about the material. We can talk about the fact that all the leather that we use, that really 99% of the world uses, is a byproduct of another industry. And the leather that we use specifically within that is vegetable tanned, and it comes from pasture-fed animals. And that in itself, as a byproduct, is something that should be celebrated. And I really welcome that conversation too. So being part of an exhibition that is celebrating materials, and to be included in that, talking about leather and showing unusual materials in leather and other unusual ideas and designs in leather, is a great opportunity for us, I think.
For Monocle at 3 Days of Design in Copenhagen, I'm Gabriele Delisanti.
My thanks to Gab for that package, and you're here with me now. So we've had this sort of moment where we've listened to you on site, and now we're back in the bedroom with you. I mean, obviously Bill being an international designer and part of a growing number that are showcasing here at 3 Days of Design. But obviously there's amazing Danish brands. There are the young players like, I guess, Muto and Hey. I mean, I say young, they're both about 2 decades old, but they're new when you're comparing them to the likes of Fritz Hansen, Jörg Jensen, Carl Hansen and son, Fredericia. I mean, do these brands hold a place in Danes' hearts still, or are they just something as outsiders we look at as amazing institutions?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think these heritage brands are so important for Denmark because they started this. So I work at Jörg Jensen myself. I spend a lot of time there, and we always talk about the importance of heritage. And every time that we do an exhibition for 3 Days of Design, we talk about how much it is rooted in our history. And you can see that, when you go to visit some of these other brands like Carl Hansen, like Fredericia, how important the heritage is for them. Even when they're creating something new and collaborating with new designers, it's always, part new, part heritage. So I think this history is what really sets the stage here in Copenhagen, and that's what has inspired generations and generations of designers to, dedicate themselves to the craft, whether they are Danish or coming from abroad.
Grace Charlton's still with us. You're from abroad, but you spoke to some Danish designers.
I'm Scandinavian. How dare you?
Are you having that moment where people speak to you in Danish and then they realize you don't speak Danish?
I got asked for directions, I think twice today, once yesterday. It's always such a thrill.
I mean, that is incredibly satisfying. I'm not going to disagree with you. You went and visited one of these heritage brands, Fredericia. Tell us a little bit about that conversation and why you, I guess, chose to talk to them.
So I spoke to Maria Bruun, who's a Danish designer. She's a collaborator of Fredericia's, or she collaborates with Fredericia, I should say. And I do feel almost for Danish designers today to have this huge heritage they've got to live up to, but it is a resource. And so she's curated this exhibition called Crafting the Present. Already in the title you can see there's the craft and the heritage, but also the insistence on being part of today's design scene. And she was really adamant that the pieces on show in this exhibition in the Fredericia showroom, a beautiful showroom, really roomy on a penthouse sort of floor, all the pieces there had to be still in use today. And she invited these craftspeople who specialize in, leatherwork and woodwork to come and demonstrate so that people could really connect and see and understand, when you buy a piece of furniture, this is what you're buying. You're buying people's skills. And it was really nice to speak to her.
Brilliant. Well, let's hear that discussion now.
Choosing me to curate the exhibition was kind of based on all of these conversations that has been the base of our whole collaboration. And I think we just have such a joint understanding of the importance of craft. We believe that it's an extra dimension. It's something that we give to people that live with these furniture in the scenography of everyday life. We do believe that craft has an essential role to play. And what was interesting about this exhibition and also our dialogue creating the exhibition is that we're saying crafting the present, because what is very important to us and to me in this exhibition is to show that Fredericia is not just the mid-century classics. So we're not just taking a heritage and putting that on a pedestal, saying that these are the icons to strive for. We are actually saying that new icons are being made side by side with these old icons, because it's a push-pull where the new generation helps make the modern classics, help them have actuality in the time that we have now. So they kind of pull value from each other, and we pull these old classics into the future and make them relevant to audience still today or to consumers still today. And I think that's also a huge balance that Fredericia is really, they're trying to figure out how craft in 2024 or even in 2050, how does modern craft look and how do we learn from the history without having it be a problematic relationship that we can't touch or we can't change anything, but we can let it inform the present and the future. So it was very important to have my own work represented, the Pioneer collection, but also very much the Plan collection from Barber and Oskeby, to have that present. Hugo Passes, his Gomo collection, a lot of Cecilia Mentz's work also from Fredericia. Our new works, Jasper Morrison's new sofa, are all reinterpretations of what constitutes Fredericia or did constitute Fredericia back in the day, but they are also very respectful in pulling Fredericia into the present and into the future.
Across the 3 days of design, there'll be a focus on one different chair.
Yes, exactly.
And the craft behind it. How important was it to sort of spotlight these icons, but also bring in the craftspeople to be there and doing live demonstrations?
Yes, the live demonstrations became very important. They became like a very important detail in the exhibition, because essentially what we wanted to showcase was the work on the factory floor. I come there personally. Of course, Rasmus comes there. Everyone from Fredericia is kind of beaming with craftsmanship. They are proud of what they do, and they are very talented at what they do. They have such smart hands on them that creates these products. And we wanted to honor that community, even saying, let's pull out some of the people who are working on these projects every day. And the funny story I told you earlier on with Wicker, who's doing the ox chair, there's only a handful of people doing the upholstery work for that chair, and he would be able to recognize the ones that he did himself. So it's also what we're pulling out throughout the 3 days in this program on the live scene is also to really illustrate the community that is behind this brand, and that this craft is not just a marketing gimmick. This is actually how things are made. This is the essence. This is the quality of what they put in to every product leaving this floor.
That was Maria Bruun. And Nick, who have you spoken to? What have you been observing throughout 3 days of design?
I've obviously, if you're here, you end up dropping into so many different showrooms, because I think it's an incredibly kind of it is an incredibly compact city and everyone seems to be next door to everyone else. But I think one of the highlights for me was a visit I paid to An Tradition, and I spoke to Paula Day, who is the daughter of the British mid-century designers Robin and Lucienne Day. Paula runs the Robin and Lucienne Day Foundation, which is an organisation dedicated to protecting her parents' legacy, I guess is the way to say it, or perhaps celebrating is maybe a better word for it. And she has worked with An Tradition to re-edit and relaunch a couple of her parents' designs from the 1950s, the Daystack chair and desk and the Royal Festival Hall outdoor chair and table. And both of these are available, or are soon going to be available for purchase for the first time since they were designed in the 50s. So it's been a massive project and a labour of love for Paula to, I guess, find the right partner for this reissue of her parents' wares. So I had a little bit of a chat to her about that, and we're going to hear that now.
I mean, initially, sadly, I realised that some of their work and their names were really being exploited, so that their names were being used to sell things which they hadn't really designed. This was my parents' life's work. That was just something I couldn't accept. And that was the sort of beginning, really, of the whole project. So there was some legal work of protecting the legacies. And then just building up the organisation as really the sort of, I suppose, the information hub for Robin and Lucienne Day worldwide. So we've built up and are constantly developing a digital archive. We work with museums, writers, and also we work with licensees, with companies which we license to produce the designs. And I've always seen that as actually very much part of our educational work, because I think that, you can read about designs, you can see them in museums, but it's when you actually can see them and touch them, and with chairs, importantly, sit in them, that you can understand, what they're about. That's that kind of very personal engagement that comes about if those designs are out in the world being used.
So the legacy, it's almost not so much about, I guess, protecting it so much as ensuring that their work is still a touch point in people's lives across the globe every day.
It is. I mean, I think those things go hand in hand, though, because it's taking the designs out into the world, authentic productions of the designs out into the world. And yes, I mean, one of the thrilling things about this project with An Tradition is realising that those designs are going to be going all over the world, into public spaces, into people's homes. I've already seen this in the exhibitions here at the An Tradition showroom. Those pieces, which I know from photographs and so on, actually sitting there in a space with other furnishings and looking completely at home, and that's just amazing.
Tell us, you mentioned licensees earlier, you've just explained that we're here with An Tradition. Tell us a little bit about that relationship and, the decision to ultimately partner with a Danish furniture brand on, I guess, the production of some of your parents' most famous works.
From the beginning of the setting up the foundation, I had a real sense that we needed to partner with a company which could take my father's designs out into the world, and which had expertise in working with historic designs. So that real, hands-on craft understanding of working with what are actually quite challenging designs to produce, some of them. And we talked to various companies over the years, really. And then in February 2020, I met Martin Hansen, the founder of An Tradition, in London. I had a great conversation. He said, "Let's do it." And I thought, right, okay, we're on. This is actually going to be the one, after all these talks.
Tell us a little bit about that values alignment, because I guess, we've got listeners across the globe. Lots of them are designers, so lots of them aren't necessarily manufacturing their own pieces. They're sort of perhaps in similar positions to you, maybe with parents that weren't as good designers, if I might say so myself. But what's that values alignment there? Is it about craft? Is it about attention to detail? Is it about the way that things are made? What ultimately tipped that over, other than Martin being charming, clearly?
I think his enthusiasm, I think his recognition, looking at pictures of my father's work, his recognition of, I think, the quality, and I imagine that these designs would make sense and appeal to not just a world audience, but particularly a Danish market, which, of course, is a great compliment to my father, I'd say. I think he'd have thought that. I think he was also interested in the fact that, there I was, his daughter, taking the designs out into the world and very ready to talk about them with a lot of passion and care.
It's about quality. It's maybe not so much about being from a particular era. Is there like a particular, is there a trademark that is a benchmark of that quality? Is it about the way that it's made, or is it about the consideration for the user? I'm just trying to zero in on it so we can, maybe have a nice takeaway for some of our listeners.
I think that's very interesting. Of course, the quality of the making, but what I meant was the quality of the design. One of the things I understand more and more working with my father's work is that everything has a reason and a meaning. He's working with certain materials for certain purposes, and he's being very creative with those, but every detail has a purpose. It's not just some kind of extraneous add-on to be, fashionable or eye-catching. It's got deep integrity, and that's, I think, what comes across. And so each designer has an absolutely defined personality. It looks like it's always been there, And therefore, it's in conversation, I'd say, with the greatest design through history, It stands its ground in that respect.
That was Paula Day, who I spoke to at And Traditions showroom in Copenhagen. And that brings today's episode to a close. Gab, I'm going to come to you for a final remark. What's been, a key moment or a big takeaway from you from the last couple of days?
I think one of the things that I have noticed is that there's brands who are joining 3 days beyond the design industry. And so I think the city is becoming more and more lively these days. So it's not just the expected design brands and studios who are joining, but also beyond. And I think that is because 3 days of design is becoming more and more known, even locally. So I think that's great, and it's going to be even better next year.
Grace, any additions to that?
I think, that almost, it's not really about the design and the furniture and a new chair being launched. It's more about coming together and Fade Too Good said it, but it's about the energy and merging it and meeting people. And I hope that 3 days can keep that energy as it continues to grow. It's only been around for 11 years now, but hopefully in 20 years it can still have this sort of small town, not small town, but, I was talking to Cecily Mans today, and she was really saying that Copenhagen's a village. So I hope it can keep that sort of a smaller feel and not eat itself up.
Yeah, like a chic village fate is what I guess we're hoping for. And I think you both have kind of touched on it there, but it's a reminder that design doesn't exist in isolation, and being somewhere like this, hopefully we can bring those values back to our own homes. But that's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now. Today's episode was edited by Maylee Evans with help from Flynn Simons. I'm Nick Manise, and you can reach me on nm@monocle.com. Thanks for listening.